The battle on the alien world of Orith 9 had been one of the hardest that Captain Evan Ramirez had ever fought in. The war had raged on for years, with the human alliance trying to secure their place in a galaxy filled with powerful alien species. Evan had been through many battles, but this one felt different. The alien forces were strong, and their tactics had been unpredictable. Still, the humans were determined to win. Evan stood at the front lines, leading his battalion as they charged across the battlefield. Explosions echoed in the distance as laser fire cut through the air. The ground beneath him trembled with the force of a nearby blast. He gripped his rifle tighter, scanning the horizon. His eyes were sharp, trained to detect even the smallest movement. But it wasn't the war that caught his attention now. From the corner of his eye, Evan saw something strange. A flash of light, unlike anything he had seen before, shot across the sky. It wasn't an explosion or enemy fire. It was a ship, a large alien vessel, hurtling toward the planet's surface. Evan's instincts kicked in. He knew the ship wasn't going to land softly. Something was about to happen. "Captain!" Sergeant Klein's voice pulled him out of his thoughts. "We need to move out of here. The enemy is regrouping." Evan nodded, but his attention was still on the falling ship. It crashed into the ground with a deafening sound, sending dust and debris flying into the air. The entire battalion watched as the dust settled, revealing the wreckage. The ship's shape was unlike anything the humans had encountered before. It looked like a blend of organic and metallic materials, as though it had grown from the planet itself. Without wasting any time, Evan gave the order to advance toward the crash site. The team moved quickly, weapons at the ready. They had to investigate the wreckage. There might be valuable intelligence hidden inside, or worse, an ambush waiting for them. As they approached, Evan noticed something strange. The ship wasn't entirely destroyed. There was a large section of it that seemed intact, a hatch that was still open, flickering with weak lights. He signaled to his team to stay alert as he moved toward it. When Evan stepped inside the ship, the smell hit him first. It was metallic, but also earthy, like the smell of something ancient. The air was thick, but not from smoke or fire, just a strange, almost organic presence that made the hairs on his neck stand up. The inside of the ship was unlike anything he had seen before. The walls were covered in strange symbols that seemed to pulse with a faint glow. The technology was advanced, much more so than anything the humans had. The more Evan looked around, the more he realized just how much they had yet to learn about the alien species they were fighting. But it wasn't the ship that held his attention for long. As he turned a corner, he froze. There, in the center of the ship's chamber, was a woman. At first, he thought she was just another casualty, someone who had been caught in the crash. But when his eyes focused on her, he realized she wasn't dead. She was alive. The woman's features were unlike any human he had ever seen. Her skin was a deep shade of violet, almost glowing in the dim light. Her hair was long and silver, cascading down her back like a waterfall of light. Her eyes, however, were the most striking. They were a shade of emerald green that seemed to shimmer with an otherworldly energy. She was beautiful, but there was something about her that made Evan uneasy. She lay on the cold floor, her wrists shackled with chains that looked far too advanced for anything humanity had created. She wasn't just any alien. She was a prisoner. Evan knelt beside her, his heart racing. "Are you all right?" he asked, his voice soft, but his instincts sharp. She didn't respond, but he could see the fear in her eyes. She was terrified, but not of him. There was something else going on here, something deeper. Before he could speak again, a voice crackled over his communicator. "Captain Ramirez, you need to fall back. The enemy's forces are regrouping. We're not going to hold this position much longer." Evan hesitated, torn between duty and the mysterious woman in front of him. He looked back at his team, who were waiting near the entrance of the ship. He could hear the sounds of battle growing louder outside. His men needed him. The war wasn't going to stop for a prisoner. But then, the woman's eyes met his. She didn't say anything, but there was a silent plea in her gaze. Evan knew she was in trouble, and if he left her here, she would likely perish. She was too valuable to be left to the enemy. "Captain?" Klein's voice broke through again, urgent this time. With a deep breath, Evan made his decision. "We're not leaving her behind," he said firmly. "Secure the ship. I'm bringing her with us." His team quickly moved into action, securing the ship's wreckage and ensuring no enemies had snuck inside. Meanwhile, Evan carefully lifted the woman into his arms. She was light, but her presence felt heavy with the weight of her past. As he carried her out of the wreckage, he couldn't help but wonder who she was and why she had been chained in that ship. When they finally made it back to their base, Evan placed her gently in a medical bay. The soldiers around him were busy, tending to the wounded, but he couldn't focus on that now. The woman's soft breathing was the only thing that mattered. "Captain," Klein said, stepping into the room, "what do you want to do with her?" Evan looked down at the alien woman, her violet skin now starting to glow softly under the medical lights. "I'm not sure," he muttered, "but we can't just leave her to the enemy." As Evan watched, over her, he realized that this woman was more than just a prisoner. She was a part of something much bigger, and the answers to the war might lie within her. Evan stood quietly in the medical bay, staring at the alien woman who was now resting on the bed. Her violet skin seemed to glow softly under the medical lights, and her long silver hair cascaded over the pillow like strands of light. Despite the alien features, there was a strange beauty in her, an elegance that felt different from any human he had ever seen. But it wasn't her looks that troubled him. It was the question of who she was and what had brought her to this moment. He had spent hours watching over her since they brought her back to the base. She hadn't spoken, and only now did her breathing seem to stabilize. Evan had seen his fair share of war wounds and battlefields, but this woman's silence was louder than any explosion. He had learned little about her since their encounter in the wreckage. She had been chained, a prisoner in an alien ship, but Evan could sense there was more to her story. He couldn't shake the feeling that there was something deeply important about her, something beyond the war. The door to the medical bay creaked open, and Sergeant Klein stepped inside, looking uneasy. He was a man of action, always ready to face the enemy, but even he seemed unsettled by the mysterious woman. "Captain," Klein said quietly, his eyes flicking to the woman on the bed. "What are we going to do with her?" Evan rubbed his chin, thinking. He didn't have an answer. The situation was complicated. The war was still ongoing, and the humans could not afford distractions, especially with enemies closing in on their position. But this woman wasn't just another prisoner of war. There was something about her that made Evan feel like they had stumbled upon a hidden key to a puzzle no one had yet solved. "I'm not sure yet," Evan admitted, "but we can't just leave her here. She's not the enemy." Klein raised an eyebrow. "You're sure about that, Captain? We don't know anything about her. She could be a spy, or worse, a weapon in disguise." "I don't think so," Evan said, shaking his head. "She wasn't fighting us. She was running from something. I saw the fear in her eyes. This isn't just about the war. There's more to it." As if on cue, the woman's eyes fluttered open. Evan quickly stepped closer to her side, his heart pounding slightly at the sudden change. She blinked, her eyes adjusting to the light, and then focused on him. There was a moment of quiet understanding between them before she spoke in a voice that was soft, but clear. "Who are you?" she asked, her accent unfamiliar but strangely melodic. Evan hesitated for a moment before answering. "I'm Captain Evan Ramirez. I found you in the wreckage. You were a prisoner." The woman's expression hardened for a moment as she looked away from him and then back. "I was not always a prisoner," she said softly, her voice filled with an underlying sadness. Evan's curiosity deepened. "What do you mean?" "My name is Zilara," she continued. "I was once the princess of a great and powerful empire. But all of that is gone now." Her eyes seemed distant, as though reliving something painful. "The war. It destroyed everything." Evan remained silent, trying to piece together her story. Princess? An empire? Everything she had known was lost in the chaos of war. His mind raced, but he had to stay calm. "What happened to your people?" Zylara's eyes darkened, and she seemed to struggle with the memory. "The enemy. Your people, the humans, invaded our world. At first we fought back, but your forces were too strong. We were outnumbered. My family was killed. And I was taken as a prisoner. My people, my home, all gone." Evan felt a pang of guilt at her words. The enemy forces he had been fighting had always been faceless to him, but now he was looking at someone who had lost everything to the war. She wasn't just an enemy. She was a person, with a history, a life, and a painful past. "I'm sorry," Evan said, his voice quieter now. "I didn't know." Zylara looked up at him, her eyes filled with both pain and something else, something that might have been trust. "You're different from the others," she said. "You could have left me to die, but you didn't. Why?" Evan wasn't sure how to answer that. The war had made him numb to so many things, but something about Zylara felt different. She wasn't just a casualty of war. She was someone with a story, and her survival wasn't just an accident. "I couldn't leave you there," he said. "We don't leave people behind." Zylara looked at him for a long moment before nodding slowly, as if she were weighing his words. She sat up, her movements slow but graceful. Her chains, still hanging from her wrists, clinked softly. "I don't know if I can trust you," she said, her voice steady despite the weariness in her eyes. "But I don't have much choice right now. The war has taken everything from me. I have nothing left but a desire for freedom." Evan's mind raced. He couldn't ignore the possibilities. Zylara was a part of something much bigger than the current conflict. Her people, her royal family, had been brought low by forces he had only begun to understand. She was a survivor, just like him. Maybe, just maybe, she held the key to ending the war. He offered her a hand. "You're free to go, but I can help you, if you'll let me." Zylara's eyes searched his face, as if trying to read his intentions. Then, slowly, she reached out and took his hand. There was a moment of connection between them, and for the first time since he had found her, Evan felt like he was no longer just a soldier in a meaningless war. There was something deeper, something more personal, tied to Zylara's fate. "I'll help you," she said softly. "But there's something you should know. There's more at stake than just this war. The destruction of my people, it's just the beginning." Evan's heart skipped a beat. "What do you mean?" Zylara's eyes locked onto his with a fierce intensity. "The ones who destroyed my empire. They are not just enemies of my people. They are enemies of everyone. And if we don't stop them, no one will be safe." Evan's mind whirled. The stakes had just gotten much higher. The days following their conversation were filled with uncertainty. Evan spent his time at the base organizing his battalion for the next phase of the war. Yet his thoughts were often drawn back to Zylara, the mysterious alien woman he had saved. She was unlike anyone he had ever met. Though she had been a prisoner, she carried herself with a regal air, her mind sharp, and her knowledge invaluable. Evan didn't know why, but something about her made him feel as though the war was much bigger than anything he had imagined. Zylara had not shared everything with him yet, but Evan could tell she was hiding something important. She often gazed out into the distance, lost in thought, as if the weight of her past still haunted her. He could see the pain in her eyes, but there was also a quiet strength there, a fire that had not been extinguished by the chaos of war. One evening, after a long day of strategizing with his team, Evan found Zylara sitting alone in a corner of the base's makeshift medical tent. She was staring down at her hands, the shackles still attached to her wrists, though they had been loosened for comfort. Her silver hair fell over her shoulders like a waterfall, and her violet skin seemed to shimmer under the dim light. Evan hesitated before stepping forward. "Are you all right?" Zylara looked up, her piercing green eyes meeting his. "I've been better," she said quietly. Her voice was soft, but there was an underlying strength to it. "I didn't ask for any of this, Captain. I was happy once, before the war took everything." Evan knelt beside her, not knowing what to say. "I can't imagine what you've been through," he said, "but we're not the same. I'm not like the others." She nodded slowly, her gaze distant. "I know. I can see that. You're different. But that doesn't mean this war is over. It's far from over." Evan felt a chill run down his spine. "What do you mean?" Zylara met his gaze. "My people, the Zalith, were a powerful race. We ruled a vast empire that spanned across several star systems, but we were betrayed. The ones who destroyed my people. They didn't do it just for power. They have a bigger plan, one that could destroy everything." Evan frowned, his brow furrowing with confusion. "Who are these enemies? Why did they attack you?" Zylara clenched her fists, her chains rattling softly. "They are not just your enemies, Captain. They're manipulating both sides of this war. They feed off the conflict. They want to see the galaxy burn. The ones who destroyed my family, they call themselves the Archon. They've been using your people and my people as pawns in their twisted game." Evan's heart raced. He had heard whispers of the Archon before, but they had always been treated like rumors, stories passed around by those desperate for answers. But now, hearing it from Zylara, it felt real. The Archon weren't just a distant threat. They were close, and they had played both sides of the war. Zylara continued, her voice heavy with emotion. "They're masters of manipulation. They've been hiding in the shadows, pulling strings, controlling the flow of information. They made sure both our sides fought each other while they watched from afar, growing stronger." Evan was silent for a long time, processing everything she had said. The weight of her words hung in the air like a dark cloud. He had always believed that the war was a battle between two sides, each fighting for survival, but now he saw it in a different light. What if the true enemy wasn't just the aliens he had been fighting, but something far more dangerous? "Why didn't you tell me this sooner?" Evan asked, his voice filled with urgency. Zylara's eyes softened. "Because I didn't know if I could trust you. I didn't know if you would believe me. You humans have your own reasons for fighting. I wasn't sure if you would listen to me." Evan looked into her eyes and saw the fear there. Not just of the enemy, but of being misunderstood, of being abandoned again. He understood that fear. "I believe you," he said firmly. "And I'm going to help you." Zylara studied him for a moment before nodding. "I don't want your pity, Captain. I want your help. Together we can stop the Archon, but we need to move quickly." Evan stood up, feeling a renewed sense of purpose. "How do we stop them?" Zylara looked at him, her face serious. "The Archon's true strength lies in an ancient artifact. It's a weapon unlike anything the galaxy has ever seen. If they get their hands on it, they will be unstoppable. They've already begun to search for it. We must find it first before they do." Evan's mind raced as the pieces began to fall into place. The artifact, that was the key. But where was it? And how would they find it before the Archon did? "We don't have much time," Zylara said, her voice low but determined. The Arkan's agents are already looking for the artifact. We need to act fast. If they have it, they will control everything. Evan nodded, his mind now set. This wasn't just about the war anymore. This was about something bigger. About saving the galaxy from a threat no one had seen coming. Xylara wasn't just a prisoner anymore. She was his ally, and together they could change the course of the war. "We'll find it," Evan said, his voice steady. "We'll stop them." Xylara stood up slowly, her chains rattling again as she moved. "We can't do this alone. I have contacts in the galaxy, people who are still loyal to my family. They might be able to help us." Evan looked at her, understanding the gravity of the situation. They weren't just fighting for their own survival anymore. They were fighting for the future of the galaxy. "We'll need a plan," he said, determination in his eyes. Xylara nodded. "We'll make one, together." The days that followed were filled with urgency. Evan and Xylara worked together, poring over star maps, old intelligence reports, and anything they could find to uncover the location of the artifact. Xylara's knowledge of the galaxy was unmatched, and her connections with loyalists to her family gave them a starting point. But the path ahead was fraught with danger. Evan's battalion had been stationed on the edge of the war zone, far from any major conflict. But the closer they got to the artifact's location, the more they felt the pressure of the situation. Every move was being watched. Every decision felt like it could tip the balance of the war. The artifact, Xylara explained, wasn't just a weapon. It was a relic from an ancient race, a species that had once ruled the galaxy before they mysteriously disappeared. The Arkan, the enemies who had destroyed Xylara's empire, were after it for a reason. It wasn't about power for them, but control. The artifact had the ability to manipulate energy on a scale that could bend the very fabric of the galaxy. Evan had heard stories of ancient technology, but nothing quite like this. If the Arkan obtained the artifact, they would become unstoppable. Their control over the war would be absolute. The fate of the galaxy would rest in their hands. Xylara led Evan to a secret base deep within the jungle of Orith 9, a place hidden from the eyes of their enemies. It was a small underground facility, disguised as a research station. Once inside, the true magnitude of the situation became clear. "I've contacted someone who can help," Xylara said, her voice filled with both hope and apprehension. "But we'll need to move fast. The Arkan will be on us soon." Evan nodded, his mind focused. "Who are we meeting?" "A former advisor to my family," she explained. "He knows where the artifact might be hidden. But getting the information won't be easy. The Arkan have spies everywhere. We need to be prepared for anything." They entered a large room, and Xylara motioned for Evan to follow her into a secured chamber. Inside, a tall figure stood by a holographic console, his back turned as he studied a map. He was older, with graying hair and a stern face, but there was an unmistakable intensity in his eyes. The moment he saw Xylara, his expression softened, though there was still a hint of suspicion in his gaze. "You brought him here?" the man asked, his voice low but filled with concern. "Are you sure we can trust him?" Xylara nodded. "I trust him. He's different from the others." Evan stepped forward, extending a hand. "Captain Evan Ramirez, I'm here to help. We need to find the artifact before the Arkan do." The man eyed Evan for a moment before shaking his hand. "I am Ral Tyr, advisor to the royal family. You'll need more than just trust to survive this. The Arkan have eyes everywhere. But if you're serious about stopping them, you've come to the right place." Xylara looked at Ral Tyr, her expression a mix of determination and sorrow. "How much do you know about the artifact?" Ral Tyr paused, his gaze drifting toward a map on the wall. "The artifact is ancient. It was created by a race known as the Aelari, a long-forgotten species. The Aelari were masters of energy manipulation, able to harness the power of entire star systems. The artifact was their final creation, a tool to control the very flow of time and space. It was lost to history, hidden away to prevent it from falling into the wrong hands. Xylara's eyes narrowed. And the Archon want it? Yes, Raltir said, turning back to face them. The Archon believe that by finding the artifact, they can control the galaxy. They've been searching for it for years. If they succeed, they will rule over all life. Evan felt the weight of Raltir's words settle on his shoulders. The stakes had never been higher. It wasn't just a fight for survival anymore. It was a fight for the future of the galaxy itself. So where is it? Evan asked, his voice steady. Raltir pointed to a section of the map, a remote planet far on the outskirts of known space. The Aelari left clues in their ruins, scattered across the galaxy. The artifact is hidden in a place known as the Nexus, a forgotten world. It's on a planet that no one has dared to visit in centuries. The Archon have been close, but they don't know its exact location. Xylara's eyes flashed with recognition. The Nexus. My people knew of it. But no one has been there in over 1,000 years. We don't have time, Evan said, his voice filled with urgency. We need to move now. Raltir nodded, turning back to the console. You're right, but getting there will be difficult. The Archon are already on the move. We can't risk being followed. Xylara's expression grew more serious. We'll need a ship, a fast one, and we'll have to go in without drawing. Attention! Evan didn't hesitate. We'll find one. He turned to Raltir, who was already preparing a list of coordinates. Get us the location of the Nexus. We'll find a way there. Raltir hesitated for a moment. If the Archon discover you're heading there, they will stop at nothing to prevent you from reaching the Nexus. This isn't just a mission. It's a war within a war. And even if you find the artifact, you'll have to fight your way out. Evan felt the weight of the challenge ahead. It wasn't just about reaching the artifact. It was about surviving long enough to use it. And the closer they got to the Nexus, the more dangerous their journey would become, but there was no turning back. The future of the galaxy was at stake. We'll do whatever it takes, Evan said, his voice filled with determination. Let's get to work. Evan's heart raced as the small transport ship sped through the vast emptiness of space. The coordinates Raltir had provided led them toward the outer reaches of the galaxy, where no one ventured, not even the most daring space pirates. The planet Nexus was a legend, its very existence questioned by many. Now, with the Archon hot on their trail, it seemed like the only place where they could find the artifact before the enemy did. Xylara sat across from Evan in the small, cramped cabin, her violet eyes fixed on the console in front of her. She was quiet, as she had been for the past few hours. The weight of their mission pressed down on her, but it wasn't just the artifact that troubled her. There was something else, something deeper, that was eating away at her. Evan could see it in the way her fingers tapped nervously against the armrest, the way she occasionally glanced out of the small window at the stars passing by. We're getting close, Evan said, breaking the silence. His voice was steady, though he too felt the pressure mounting. Any thoughts on how we get in and out of Nexus without being noticed? Xylara didn't immediately respond. Her eyes lingered on the distant stars, but there was something else in her gaze, something distant. When she finally spoke, her voice was low, almost sad. It's not just about finding the artifact, Evan, she said quietly. The Archon won't stop until they have it, but the artifact is more than just power. It's a trap. The Aelari created it, but it's not just for controlling energy. It's a key to something much bigger. Evan leaned forward, sensing the seriousness in her words. What do you mean? Xylara took a deep breath. The Nexus is not just a place. It's a prison. The artifact holds the key to releasing something that has been locked away for eons. Something ancient. Something dangerous. The Aelari knew what they were doing. They hid it away to protect the galaxy from what lies beneath. Evan's brow furrowed as the implications of her words sank in. Are you saying that the artifact is dangerous? That we shouldn't even try to get it? Xylara shook her head slowly, her expression grim. No. We have to find it. But we have to be prepared for what comes next. The Archon will try to use it to dominate the galaxy. But if they unlock what's hidden within the Nexus, it could be the end of everything. The weight of her words settled over Evan like a heavy cloud. They weren't just trying to stop the Archon from taking control. They were trying to prevent the release of something that could destroy all of them. As the ship moved deeper into the uncharted space, the sense of danger only grew. The Archon were close, too close, and they would stop at nothing to prevent Evan and Xylara from reaching Nexus. It wasn't just a race against time anymore. It was a battle for survival. Hours later, the small transport ship finally reached the outer atmosphere of Nexus. The planet was just as mysterious as the stories had suggested, dark, desolate, and shrouded in a thick cloud of mist. The landing site was marked on their map, but as they descended through the atmosphere, a sense of dread filled the cabin. "This is it," Xylara said, her voice tense. "The Nexus. It's just as I remember." Evan's eyes scanned the planet's surface. Through the window, the terrain was rugged, covered in jagged rocks and deep ravines. There was no sign of life. It looked like a place abandoned long ago, a world forgotten by time. The ship's landing gear touched the surface with a soft thud. As the ramp lowered, the cold air rushed in, and Evan felt an uneasy chill crawl up his spine. They had arrived, but the real challenge had only just begun. "Stay sharp," Evan said, as he and Xylara moved toward the ship's exit. "We don't know what's waiting for us." They stepped out onto the rocky ground, and Xylara led the way, her steps confident. Despite the uncertainty that surrounded them, they made their way toward an ancient structure visible in the distance, a massive stone building that seemed to rise out of the earth like a forgotten monument. The closer they got, the more it became clear that this was no ordinary structure. It was a temple, ancient and worn by centuries of neglect. As they approached the entrance, the ground suddenly trembled beneath them. Evan's heart skipped a beat as he turned to look back at the ship. A ship, larger than their own, was descending from the sky, its sleek form unmistakable. "The Archon," Xylara whispered, her eyes wide with fear. Evan immediately reached for his weapon, his pulse quickening. They had no time to waste. The Archon had found them, and they wouldn't stop until they had the artifact. "We need to move now," Evan ordered. They sprinted toward the temple, Xylara leading the way with her knowledge of the ancient paths. The Archon ship landed behind them, and Evan could hear the unmistakable sound of soldiers disembarking. They were close, too close. Inside the temple, the air was thick with dust and the remnants of forgotten power. Strange symbols were etched into the walls, glowing faintly as they passed by. Xylara moved with purpose, her eyes scanning the walls as if she knew exactly where they were going. "There," she said, pointing to a doorway at the far end of the hall. "The artifact is beyond that door." Evan moved quickly, but before they could reach the door, a loud crash echoed from behind them. The Archon had entered the temple. "We're not going to make it," Xylara said, her voice filled with dread. "They'll stop us. They'll use the artifact against us." Evan turned to her, his eyes fierce. "Not if I can help it." In that moment, Xylara looked at him with a mix of gratitude and sorrow. "Evan, if something happens, you need to take the artifact. You're the only one who can use it. The Archon, they won't hesitate to destroy it." Evan's heart clenched at her words. "We'll get through this. We will." But even as he said the words, he knew the danger they faced was far greater than anything they had imagined. The Archon were closing in, and the artifact was still within their reach. But if they were to survive this, Sacrifices would have to be made. The temple shook once again, the sound of explosions echoing in the distance. The Arcan soldiers were closing in, their footsteps heavy as they moved swiftly through the ancient halls. Evan's heart pounded in his chest, but his focus was unshakable. He had to keep moving, had to reach the artifact before the Archon did. Xylara's life and the fate of the galaxy depended on it. They reached the door she had pointed to earlier. It was massive, made of dark stone that seemed to absorb the light around them. Strange markings were carved into its surface, pulsing with a faint, eerie glow. Xylara stepped forward, her fingers brushing the symbols as if they were alive. "This is it," she said quietly. "The artifact lies beyond this door." Evan nodded, his mind racing. He didn't know exactly what the artifact was or what it could do, but he knew it was their only hope. The Archon wouldn't hesitate to use it, for their own gain, to bend the galaxy to their will. But Xylara had warned him it wasn't just a weapon. It was a key to something far greater, something that could destroy everything if it fell into the wrong hands. Xylara reached for the center of the door, her eyes locked on the markings. She murmured something under her breath, a language Evan didn't understand. But the door slowly began to creak open. The stone parted, revealing a hidden chamber bathed in an ethereal blue light. In the center of the room, a pedestal stood, and upon it rested the artifact. It wasn't what Evan had expected. The artifact wasn't a weapon, nor was it a device of destruction. It was a crystal, smooth and translucent, its core glowing with a soft inner light. It seemed almost alive, pulsing with energy. Evan could feel its power even from where he stood. "This is it," Xylara whispered, her voice filled with awe. "This is the key." But as she moved toward it, the ground trembled. Beneath them once again, the Archon were here. Evan's instincts kicked in. "Get back!" he shouted, grabbing Xylara by the arm and pulling her to the side. The door behind them slammed shut with a deafening thud, trapping them inside. The room began to fill with the sound of footsteps, the Archon soldiers closing in from all directions. "Evan, they're here!" Xylara said, her voice filled with urgency. "They're going to destroy everything!" Evan's eyes darted around the room, looking for an escape. But there was none. The only way out was to secure the artifact, no matter the cost. "We have to get to it first," Evan said, determination in his eyes. He turned to Xylara. "You stay here. I'll hold them off." Xylara shook her head. "I'm not staying behind. This is my fight too. We have to stop them together." Evan hesitated for a moment, but then nodded. He wasn't going to leave her behind. Together, they would face whatever came next. The Arcan soldiers stormed into the room, their weapons drawn. They moved quickly, their eyes scanning the chamber for the artifact. The leader, a tall, imposing figure with a scar across his face, stepped forward, a cruel smile crossing his lips. "You're too late," he sneered at Evan and Xylara. "The artifact belongs to the Archon now." Evan raised his weapon, his finger tight on the trigger. "Not if I have anything to say about it." A fierce firefight erupted in the chamber. The Arcan soldiers fired their weapons, their energy, blasts lighting up the room with flashes of bright blue light. Evan and Xylara dove behind the stone pillars, taking cover as the battle raged around them. Xylara fired back with precision, her alien weapon deadly and accurate. Evan's heart raced as he ducked behind the stone, his mind focused on one thing, keeping Xylara safe and ensuring the artifact didn't fall into the wrong hands. The Archon leader advanced, his soldiers flanking him as they closed in. The energy blasts grew more intense, and the room shook with each explosion. Xylara was relentless, her movements fluid as she picked off the soldiers one by one. Evan fought alongside her, their teamwork flawless. It was clear that neither of them was willing to lose this fight. But as the battle continued, something changed. The ground beneath them began to glow, a soft, pulsing light emanating from the walls. The artifact's glow grew brighter, and Evan felt a strange energy coursing through the room. The Arkan soldiers hesitated, confused by the sudden shift in the air. They had no idea what was happening. "Xylara!" Evan shouted. "We have to! Reach the artifact, now!" With a final push, Xylara broke through the line of soldiers, sprinting toward the pedestal. Evan followed closely behind, his heart pounding in his chest. They were so close. The artifact was within reach. But just as Xylara placed her hand on the crystal, a sudden explosion rocked the room. The Arkan leader had fired a last shot, aiming directly at the pedestal. The impact sent shock waves through the chamber, knocking Evan and Xylara to the ground. The pedestal cracked, and the artifact flickered, its light dimming for a moment. "No!" Xylara cried out, rushing to the pedestal. "We can't let them destroy it!" Evan struggled to his feet, his vision blurry from the blast. He could hear the Arkan leader laughing, but it was faint. The chamber was filled with the hum of energy, and the air was thick with tension. Xylara was desperate, her hands trembling as she reached for the artifact. "Evan, we have to do something!" she shouted. With one final burst of strength, Evan rushed forward, pushing the Arkan leader aside as he reached the pedestal. He grabbed Xylara's hand, pulling her away just as the artifact flared with energy. A shockwave of light exploded outward, pushing the Arkan soldiers back. The room trembled, and the sound of distant explosions echoed from outside the temple. The Arkan soldiers scattered, their mission a failure. The artifact had chosen its protectors. It was not just a weapon, it was a beacon of power, and it had found its rightful holders. As the dust settled, Xylara and Evan stood together, staring at the artifact. It was glowing once again, its power now fully awakened. They had won. The war wasn't over, but this was a new beginning. "We did it," Xylara whispered, her voice filled with awe. Evan nodded, his eyes on the artifact. "Together, we changed the galaxy." The future was uncertain, but one thing was clear. The galaxy had a chance for peace, thanks to their courage and sacrifice. The battle was just the beginning, but for now, they had secured the hope of a new dawn.